Previously in Dark Places.
It started moving super fast, faster than our eyes could keep up with, back and forth, all the while changing colors from bright white to red to, I think, green to purple.
It was dark with orange lighting. At one point, it came to a complete stop. Some lava-looking stuff came out of it and went into the lake.
Welcome to the show, guys. This is another crossover episode with Seth's Daily Podcast. Seth introduced us to a gentleman by the name of Earl Mullins, who had a recent UFO sighting he's going to tell us about. Earl is also an amateur Bigfoot researcher, so we're going to be talking to him all about that. If you had an encounter and you'd like to be a guest on our show, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. And now, here's our interview with Earl Mullins over on Seth's Daily Podcast.
Welcome to Seth's Daily Podcast. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible, and thank you guys for subscribing. This is another crossover episode with, and that's the fancy word for it. I said a collab with In Dark Places. How are you guys doing tonight, Tracy and Junebug?
Doing awesome, man. Doing good.
Yes, sir, man. Doing great.
And you guys got something to read. That's right.
It's Prestonsburg, Kentucky. Police are asking for the public's help in finding a Floyd County woman who's been reported missing. Candy Gonzalez, 36, of Prestonsburg, was last seen Tuesday near Abbott Creek Road, which this story's a couple weeks old, so she wasn't seen Tuesday, but it's been a couple weeks. She's described as 5 feet 8 inches tall, 110 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes, and she was last seen wearing a pink one-piece romper outfit. Anyone with information about her whereabouts is asked to contact the Kentucky State Police at 606-433-7711. Now, the reason I even bring this story up is, one, I mean, we just all seen the video. And if people say it could be drugs. It could, more than likely it may be drugs, because if you watch the video, she's very erratic. But when I first saw it, the first thing that come to my mind was she looked like, of course, it's kind of grainy. You're not going to get like a real close, look at her. But to me, it looks almost like a demonic possession. I don't know, man. I just can't explain it. She's just out of it, and she's not even walking in a straight line. She's going back and forth, and then forward and backwards. And then all of a sudden she just takes off running towards the woods. And she does these two little jumps before she gets out of sight. And it just doesn't look humanly natural to me. I may be totally wrong, maybe totally off on it. But to me, it doesn't look human as she's running away. I'm a big firm believer in demonic possessions, but on top of that, this story has been out for a couple of weeks, and this girl's been missing and hasn't been seen since. And she jumped into that creek. It's just like she hit the woods and disappeared. So I don't know. What's your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, freaky stuff. It was really bizarre. I'm with you. It seemed like a kind of possession.
I don't know. It's hard to tell, man. It kind of looks like she's like yelling at like a person, like behind, like there might be a person back somewhere or something, like chasing after her.
I don't know. It's hard. I don't know.
Okay, we're blessed enough to have a guest named Earl Mullins. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
I'm doing pretty good, man. And I know you had a UFO sighting here in Knott County, Kentucky at Carrsford Lake, if you want to go into that.
Yeah, I was coming home from work. It was between 10:30 and 11 o'clock. And as I've turned up on 1231 up to where you turn off, you cross there at the beach, Carfork Lake at the beach, make a left to come like you going to come to the cross Big Branch, on the old road on old 550. But as I turned up through there, I noticed, well, when I come across the bridge, I noticed a very bright light. And I mean, it was just very bright. And I thought, I know there was no light there on top of that mountain. They have mined that up there and it's leveled and they've sowed it in grass, and there's people that lets their cattle through there to graze. So when I just, as soon as I turned up in there and where I could see again, I just started looking for that light, and then there it was. And I know, like I said, there was no light there on top of that mountain there. And so I thought, well, if that's some kind of star or something like that, it should follow me as I'm going on up, on up the road. Well, it didn't. So me and my not thinking, I should have turned right back around and come down there at the water plant and just sit there and watch and see what happened. And which I didn't. But now the light is, I've not seen it since. Never seen it, not one time again. And what was interesting about that, I managed a Family Dollar, and one of the truck drivers came there and he asked me if I had seen anything, pertaining to something like that. And I told him about it. And he told me in his travels that there was sightings everywhere. He was from New York is where he was from. And where the pandemic and everything, he hadn't been able to go home or anything, but he had said that, there's just sightings all over the place. And that's basically, that's the story, just the bright light. I have no explanation for what it was, except that I know that I've not seen it since. And it was very bright. Very
Did you
bright.
hear any noise coming from the object?
No, nothing. I just, like I said, it was just, the light was just, it was just like it was sitting there, and it was right above the mountaintop. And me thinking the way I think about that now, in my heart, I know it was a UFO. And who knows? They might have been, you hear tales about abductions and things like that at all times. What's to say that they wouldn't get them some cattle or something, because there's cattle up there.
Yeah, I know.
And Dale, Dale, and some of them, they've got cattle up there.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're talking about. There's there's probably thousands of cattle up there.
Yeah. So who's to say that wasn't going on,
It's definitely possible, man.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask y'all this. Was you aware that there was a government facility in Harlan County?
No.
It's under the mountain?
No, but it's not the first time I've heard of a government facility in a mountain like that, but I didn't know there was one down there. No.
Well, I've had surgery on my legs and stuff several times. And my first time was at St. Joe's in Lexington. And while they was preparing me for surgery, they didn't knock me out or anything. So we was having conversations about Bigfoot, just different things. There was one of the nurses that was originally from over in Harlan. And she mentioned that about that government facility. And she said that stealth bomber and different things. She mentioned that. And she said people had experienced like they would lose blocks of time, maybe 5 or 6 hours. And I said, well, so you're saying that possibly they was abducted or something? And she said, yes. And they would lose blocks of time that they couldn't account for. Well, a couple of years ago, I was fortunate enough to attend a Bigfoot thing over there in Harlan. Met a lot of people. And I met this one lady over there, and I mentioned that to her. And she pointed me out to this guy. She said, if anyone knows, it would be him. So I went over and introduced myself to him, and I asked him that question, and he said, yes, it's under Black Mountain. And so he said, you can go to the top, and he said, there's antennas and everything up there you can see. He said, it's there. So, I was like you guys, I didn't know it. I didn't even think of something like that, but it's under the mountain over there, evidently. So
is there any has anybody ever witnessed anything weird over there?
Well, other than that, I think that possibly that like she said, the stealth bombers A lot of people thought they was seeing UFOs and stuff, but she said it possibly was them stealth bombers. That's, what she felt. But then she couldn't, like she was telling people was talking about they would lose blocks of time, 5 and 6 hour blocks that they couldn't account for. So, that makes you wonder, what's going on over there.
It actually might have been alien stuff instead of government stuff. You never know.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the same area where that light was you saw?
Oh, me? No. What I seen was over here where I live, over at Carfork Lake.
Yeah, close to where I live as well, which I seen outside my house, which is close to the lake. So, and there's also been a sighting at the lake by one of Here to Chew Bubblegum's hosts as well. So
that's seems to be kind of a hotbed right there.
So that's 3. That was 2008 when I seen mine, and I'm not sure when Here to Chew Bubblegum seen his, but Earl seen his 2 months ago, right?
Yeah, that's my first one. Now, when I was young, very young, I thought that I possibly could have seen one, but I would have, like I said, I was young then. And when you're a teenager and stuff, it's a lot of things that happen that you didn't make sense then, but it makes sense now. Yeah.
I want to say that Goose saw his in 95, 96, but I'm not 100% sure.
I've Bigfoot is actually more my forte, and I'm a novice. I consider myself a novice. I'm not an expert on it, but I've been interested in it for probably now 30 years or better. And people, like he mentioned a while ago, people will tell you stuff when they realize that you're not going to make fun of them. And I've been asked to come on that show, Finding Bigfoot, like I mentioned to you. And that was a few years ago. And actually that Zach, I think it was his brother came in the store. It's been about a month or so back. And I gave him my number and stuff because he was asking me. And he said that they'd mentioned me again about maybe possibly coming on that show. And because I've got many tales that I can tell, and then actually I've seen it myself twice. I seen it right there on 15 there it's an IGA now. It used to be a pickpack.
Yeah, I know where it's at.
And my second time I seen it was I was coming through Natural Bridge Park, and I was coming from Badeville heading to Slade, and it crossed the road right in front of me. I could not get off the road, or I would have got footage. I could not nowhere get off the road, and
That's
I was on
the It described exactly on your first sighting, Earl. What did you see? Was it 10 foot, 9 foot? Was it a juvenile?
It was an adult, and it was tall. And it was like, at that time I was driving, working for Frito-Lay. And I got up and I looked outside, and it was absolutely pouring the snow. And I had to drive to Leslie County, hiding into there. So I decided I was going to have to leave early because, the road conditions and stuff. Well, when I come out of the shower and stuff and come out and looked out again, I seen this. Actually, I thought, maybe it was a person and was walking. And I thought, what in the world is somebody doing out this time of morning? And, and it pouring the snow and walking. Then as it come on down more in front of the store, I seen how big it was, how tall. And I said, oh my, I said, surely this is not what I think this is. Well, a pickup came up the road, slowed down, like he maybe was going to offer a ride. And then it just shot the gas to it and took off. Another one came behind it, just a few minutes, basically the same thing. So that right there confirmed in my mind what I was seeing. And when it got down, if you watch the Roger Patterson footage, some of the footage, I recognized the walk immediately. And it got down, and it's a mound of dirt across from that store, and there's a driveway that goes up some mountains towards some houses. And when it got in front of that, I know exactly what I was seeing. But by the time I got home that afternoon, I was going to go over and check for footprints and that kind of thing. But it warmed up enough that the snow melted. So, I just got that sighting. And then if you talk to people around there close, they'll tell you tales. That's actually where I work there at that Family Dollar now. I heard a very good loud scream there one morning. The truck driver heard it. A couple guys that was there to unload the truck, they all heard it. That truck driver was like, what was that? And I just said, well, I said, did you hear anything last night? And he said, no. And I said, well, that was a Sasquatch scream. And he just kind of grinned. I said, well, you may not believe in it, but it's here. It's here. So
Were you close enough to get any kind of facial details on the two you saw there?
no, neither one. No, the second one I seen, it crossed the road in front of me, and it was covered with reddish brown hair, and like I said, and you know the gait it has, and it got up into some very thick high brush, and I lost eyesight with it. And but what was interesting about it, when I mentioned it to when I got to my next stop, I mentioned it to them, and they kind of laughed, and I said, well, I know what I saw, and you know, and there's actually some other stories from out there at that very same area. But anyway, the next week when I came through there, that whole highway was lined where people could get off and park all down up that road. And so when I got to my store, I said, what's going on down through there? And she said, well, they're actually in here investigating. She said, there's been so many sightings that that they decided they was going to investigate. They got in contact with the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, and they come in to investigate. So I said, well, I told you folks what I seen last week, and you know, and I wasn't the only one had sightings. So
shout out to Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group. Charlie Raymond is one of the head people there, and I was lucky enough to interview him.
Don Neal's part of that group. Yeah.
See, I don't really know any of them people. This was several years ago when they asked me to come on that show, and it's because of the tales I can tell and that kind of thing, and plus my own experiences. And then they invited me. A lady was over some part of that, and they invited me to come to Turkey Creek, wherever. I think it's in Jackson County, and it's like a kind of a resort kind of thing, ain't it? I don't know where it's at.
I'm not too familiar with it, but how tall would you say was the what you seen Bigfoot? How tall was it?
Probably at least 8 foot. Every bit of 8 foot.
Was that the first time or the second time?
The first time I would say it was a little bit smaller, probably about 7 or so. It was tall, but the second one was a lot taller. It was a good foot taller, probably about 8 foot in that range.
They have kind of that same build as Patty.
It was covered in brownish red hair, and I knowed it. I mean, when it crossed the road, I was just like, you know, just got real excited but I couldn't get off the road. Nowhere where it crossed that, there was nowhere for me to get that truck off the road, or I would have been out of that truck and I would have been trying to get me some footage, but I could not. My timing was just not right that day.
Have you heard of any sightings around here at the lake? You don't have to say any names.
Oh yeah, all kinds of. My brother-in-law, he was. They've made, most people that know me, they've called me Bigfoot, made fun of me over it for years. Well, a lot of them gets their comeuppance on it. They get kind of a dose of reality when it hits them. My brother-in-law and my nephew was fishing up there at the lake. They'd put in down there at the dam. Come up to, I don't know if you're familiar with the lake, you got that one small slough on your left, and then the next one up is Kellytown. My nephew comes in the store the next day and he says, Uncle Jeff, you ain't going to believe what happened to us last night. And I said, what happened? And he said, something started throwing rocks at us. And he said, they weren't just little rocks. He said, they was big rocks. And I said, like boulders or something? He said, yeah. So I looked at his dad and I said, what do you think about it? And he wouldn't say nothing. And then I said, so you think possibly that someone walked from the dam all the way, there's a trail that goes so far, I know. And I said, and they walked all the way up to where you guys was fishing. I said, even if it was somebody growing pot, I doubt they would have thrown rocks. They would have probably fired some warning shots or something of that nature. And he said, he said, no. He said, whatever it was, he said, I could hear it growling, and it was throwing rocks, and they was hitting right beside the boat. And he said they was big. And he said, we left. So, you know, that's a scare tactic. I mean, if you're close to where they don't want you, they'll give you a warning. And it's usually something like that. They'll throw stones at you, or maybe toss a log at you or something like that. So
Hey, Earl, have you ever heard of a man named Todd Standing?
Yes,
Have you seen his footage?
yes, yes.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think it looks to me like it could be authentic, but there's different ones in the groups, that think that he's in it for the money,
Right.
basically, and they kind of scoff at some of his stuff. The one footage that I watched of it, it looks authentic to me.
Yeah. Have you seen where he actually spent the night? And I guess he was surrounded by several of them.
Right, right.
And
And
I don't know, man. That's pretty convincing. I mean,
yeah, and
that's
he was recording and he run out. He was running. They was basically guiding him out the way they wanted him to go out.
right.
And they was on each side of him. And when he comes out into the open, he right face to face with a big grizzly, if you remember it.
That's
So
and I mean, just because he has a little meltdown right there where he starts screaming back at him and throwing rocks at him, and you can
right,
you can hear the growls off into the distance and things. And
right.
it's just, if that is faked, that is a very good fake.
Yeah, and some of his stuff is footage, and I just think, I tell you, I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, but he's passed away now. He was from the state of Washington, which is my home state. He Paul Freeman. If you can get a chance and watch his footage, I think it's authentic. I don't think it's not fake whatsoever. And you can, if you watch so much footage like I have, you recognize fake, or
Yeah.
I can. And I mean, that Paul Freeman, he tells his story, and his footage is authentic, in my opinion.
Well, when you normally think of somebody seeing a Bigfoot or something, you normally think that they're way out in the middle of nowhere, but we're getting sightings more and more in populated areas. Now, I'm not talking like you're going to find one downtown Lexington, but
Right.
It's a good possibility you may see one on the outskirts of Estensburg.
Yep.
You know?
Well, actually, there's some guys, and I cannot think of their name. That's where they're from. It's over in that area in Floyd County.
Mhm.
I was at Cumberland Falls. This has been a few years back, and I made a comment to this guy I was with. I said, "This right here place, right where we was at, would be an excellent place to come and do a hunt." And lo and behold, I run across a clip, and these guys was from Floyd County over there. Cannot think of their names. And they went down there and done a hunt. They had heard a lot of stories coming from the campgrounds and stuff down there. Well, they make their trip down there. They go to the forestry people. Forestry people will not talk about it whatsoever. They posted signs that trails numbers 2 through 11 have been closed and the campgrounds was closed due to public safety concerns. Well, when they started talking to the locals, then it was Sasquatch that was going into these campgrounds that they thought and just wrecking them. I mean, causing all kinds of problems. And they done a hunt, had an encounter. It was in the brush was so thick they couldn't get no footage of it, but they had prints. They had the print. They showed the prints, all kinds of stuff. They got rocks thrown at them, the whole works. They could hear it growling, but they could not in the brush and everything, the underbrush. And if you notice, they have some intelligence. So they get into that stuff and they know what they're doing. I mean, nobody can convince me that there's some kind of, they're not just an animal. They possess intelligence. I mean, they could be some kind of civilization, from the past that decided they didn't want to follow society and they just disappeared. Almost like the mermaids. Have you heard the story about the mermaids?
I have.
Yeah. So basically something like that, So, I mean, like I said, I've been in this Bigfoot stuff for a long time. I'm a firm believer of it, and it's just too much out there. And people scoff at it, I know. But like y'all said, around these towns and stuff, I mean, people, when they find out you're not going to make fun of them, they'll talk.
Well, yeah, I want to put that out there now. That way, if anybody wants to get a hold of us or Seth or anybody, and you got a story to tell, we don't need to know your name unless you want to tell it. We don't even need specifics on where you saw it. We just want your story. So don't be afraid to come forth and let us know. We'll definitely keep your name out of it. We'll keep your location if that's what you wish to do.
Well, I like the contacts. I have people calls me at the store, my old customers from when I done route work. They'll want me to come and look at something and different things. So anybody that wants to contact me, I'm all ears if they want to talk about it.
Good
And
deal.
how can people get in contact with you if they want you to come and investigate like a Bigfoot sighting or something?
Well, I've got a Facebook, of course, and it's Earl Jeffrey Mullins. And or I work at the Family Dollar there at Vico. I'm the store manager. So anybody, has got something they want to tell, they can feel free to call, and I'll set up something with them, and I'll be glad to listen to them.
You know what would be really, really cool if we all four of us went on like a Bigfoot expedition or something like that, or a UFO hunt. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I went. It's the last time I went. It's been early spring. I went down here to where the dairy bar is at the top of the hill, because the girl that worked there said she was sitting at one of them tables one night, and she said she heard screams and everything galore, which would be right over in that, around the dam and over in that area. And so I came down there one night. I sat there by myself. I sat there for about 3 hours. Did not hear anything, no screams, no knocks, nothing. But I tell you what was interesting, and I'm not into this stuff, but I thought that possibly I seen orbs. And when I mentioned that to her, she was just like another story. Yes, she said yes. She said, I said I'm not familiar with that kind of stuff, but to me, that's what I thought. That's what I was saying was orbs.
I was going to ask you if you had any kind of reports in your witnesses and stuff mention the orbs of light. It's
yeah. Well, see, several years ago I had to contact, and she actually worked. It was when MySpace. It was before Facebook. MySpace was big. I got to know her. She was in all types of paranormal spirits, which I'm always been afraid of the spirits getting possessed. I'm terrified of that. So I've kind of shied away from that. And she was Wiccan. For some reason, I'm a magnet for these Wiccans. I don't know what it is, but they just seem like they hunt me out all the time. And anyway, she was in the Sasquatch. She was in the spirits. She told me all kinds of interesting stories and everything. Well, she volunteered to want to do my reading, like a tarot reading or whatever. I'm a twin. My twin was stillborn. But when she tried to do my reading, she said, I can get to a certain point, and then I can't go no farther. She said, it's almost like a door is being slammed in my face. And I don't know anything about that stuff. So I'm like, so what does that mean? She said, well, I can tell you that your aura is blue, but it has a gold ring around it. And I said, well, what does that mean? And she's like, I don't know. And then I told her, of course, I was a twin, and my twin was stillborn. And she thought, well, that possibly could be something to do with it. And she got in some contact with some other people in her group, I guess. And it went about a month or so. Never heard no more. She never mentioned it more. Never heard no more about it. One of the guys that I worked with, and that's when I was working with the meat company, he was in Lexington. And he calls me and he said, there's some guy here that wants to speak to you. And I said, well, who is it? He said, I have no idea. Well, he said, is this Earl? And I said, yes, it is. And he said, we know of you. And I just went, click. I mean, how weird is that? I mean, somebody just out of the blue, and then they say something like that to you. So I waited a while because it rattled me a little bit. And I called him back, my buddy back, and I said, who was that man? And he said he was dressed all in black. He had black fingernails, all that kind of stuff. It was a Wiccan priest. That's what he was. It was a Wiccan priest. And I mean, nothing has happened since that. But I mean, I just thought, well, I mean, why would he even bother, for one thing, to call me? Unless, I said, am I they feel I'm some kind of threat to them or something? Because I can do some things like discern and different things like that. And I don't really know a lot about it, but I've been told that's what it is. Some of the stuff that I can do at times. And so I just thought that was just so weird that, something like that. And it just blew my mind. I didn't know what to say.
Well, I used to ghost hunt myself, and then the more spiritual I got, the more I got away from it, because, I don't need that bad juju on me, for one.
Oh no, that's very dangerous.
And I don't need to be bringing stuff home with me and things like that. So the more I got into my Bible and the more spiritual I got, the more I got away from it. And now I don't do it at all. I really don't even like talking about it a whole lot, other than I just feel that I need to tell people that, hey, demon possession is real. There's demons on this earth that you can't see. They're around you all the time, and you have to put on the armor of God to fight them off.
And well, when my dad passed away, both of my sisters that was living, my oldest sister, which when she was anorexic, she died when she was in her early 40s, and of all things, she was an RN. Very intelligent, and she every place that she was in the hospital, my dad was in exact same places, same beds, same rooms, everything. Well, when my dad passed away, both of my sisters that's still living, they said that dad came to them. My baby sister, her husband, and he had cancer when he was very young. They told him he would never be able to father children. Well, this person, I'll say, when it appeared to my sister, talked to her, and basically when he left, she turned around and said, "Oh, by the way, it will be a boy." And lo and behold, she had a son. To me, I mean, I believe that when that happens, a demon will appear to you as someone they want you to see. An angel will appear to you as an angel. Am I right about that?
I think you're correct on that. And if the devil is not going to come to you looking like the devil, they're going to come to you as a familiar spirit.
Exactly.
And even the Bible tells you to beware of familiar spirits.
Well, that's what I told both my sisters. I said, now, I mean, that what might appear to have been dad, but more than likely it was a demon. I said, I just find it interesting that it told you that you was going to have a son, and she did. He's, I think, 12 or 13 now, and I'm very proud of him. He's been on radio, TV out there in Indiana where he's at. He's very intelligent. She had him tested. His IQ, and this was a couple years ago, his IQ is 187, was 187 at that time.
Wow.
And he's been on television. He's into fundraising. I mean, he's just a different kind of kid. He ain't your normal kid.
Well, getting back to Bigfoot real quick, when you've done your expeditions and went out doing some research and stuff, have you ever actually encountered a howl or maybe a tree knock or a scream?
Yeah, I've heard knocks. I've seen the structures. I've not actually seen one when I've been out on a hunt, but I've heard the howls and different things right here where I live. I can go out on the porch at night sometimes and sit, and I can hear it's coming up from the lake, of course, but I can hear screams and different howls at times, not all the time, but I've heard them occasionally. Where I live right here, like I mentioned, when you're young, there's stuff that don't make sense to you, but now that you're grown up and into this stuff, it does. Behind my home here where I live, it was before they took off the top of the mountain. There was a path back there that one time these loggers tried to slip in on Dad's land, was going to slip in and log it, and he ran them off. Well, they left a path back there where they'd cut it with a dozer. I'd walk that path all the time when I squirrel hunted. There was a tree, I can remember it distinctly. It came up maybe a foot or so, and then it was bent, and then it come down and touched the ground, and then it came back up. I always thought that was so weird, that tree, where it was growed like that. Well, the friend of mine that I met at the seminar over, he posted some pictures a while back, and lo and behold, there was a picture of the same thing in his pictures. So evidently, a Sasquatch had done that.
Right, and there's other tree evidence that I always kind of baffled me, is if if you come across a tree that is leaning up against another tree, and at the bottom of that, if you would think, okay, well, that tree just rotted and broke over and fell over. But then when you get to looking and there's no root system there, it's like something picked the tree up, stabbed it in the ground, and leaned it over on another tree.
Exactly.
How do you explain that? I mean,
Well, more than likely, that's what it is. It's marking. They mark their territory.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, what I'm saying is people who think that this is all hooey and crazy, I want them to explain to me how that tree got moved from its root system and placed and leaned up against another tree.
Exactly. Yeah. And no human being is going to be able to lift a tree like that.
Oh, no, we're talking, 8, maybe 10 inches in diameter, which, isn't great, but that thing's 30 feet long. That's a couple 100-pound tree.
Right.
So
I live in kind of the same type of environment. I see, I hear howls and tree knocks and junk all the time out in my yard.
Wow.
Okay. Usually it's howls though here.
How familiar are you guys with the Sayersville area?
Me, I'm very familiar with it.
I've been through there. Yeah, I've been through there a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah, just driving through. I'm not real familiar with it.
Okay, when you go out 40 and there's a store out there outside of Sayersville, it's pretty good ways out there, and it's called the Handy Mart. Right before you get to the Handy Mart there's a road. It goes to the left and it takes you back through. I want to say that's called Coon Creek through there, but I'm not positive about that. That road there all the way through, and you go out, travel all the way through there, is loaded with paranormal, loaded with stories, spirits, UFOs. This one lady told me a story that one night it woke her up, the light was so bright, and it was a UFO, and it was just hovering above the mountain. And she said the next day when they went out, they was out on 4-wheelers. They actually seen a Sasquatch. Their dogs run up the hill towards it, and then they come off of there like, scalded dogs basically, and they was terrified. And she said it was silvery in color, so evidently an older one. But she said there was mysteriously a mound of dirt. It just come out of nowhere. They have no explanation why it was there, where it come from. Also through there was a legend of the Confederate Army hiding a solid gold bugle inside of a tree. And because the Union Army was closing in on them and they didn't want that bugle to get, they didn't want it took or captured, and they hid it inside of a tree. And I reckon there's people from all over the world that has been looking for that. And they'll never find it. That tree's probably grown over now if the tree is actually still standing.
Yeah, that was 150 plus years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and the bugle has never been found.
Isn't there stories about here in Knott County about a Bigfoot as well? Like back in the 1800s, I remember hearing older people, like in their 70s and 80s, talk about how their grandparents used to tell them about stories about Bigfoot.
Oh yeah, well, Red Fox up our Hills Branch. The lady told me one time that they called it the old man from the woods, is what they called it back then. And she said that when it came through, that it would hit the houses as it was passing through. It would hit the houses with its fist. The dogs would, of course, be going crazy. And she said it would be the awfulest stench. And, they know what it was. And it would just hit the houses that passed when it was passing through. It just hit the houses. So, yeah, it's all kinds of stuff here in Knott County.
There's a lot of, there's no telling how many UFO sightings there has. Have you heard it from anybody from Knott County that told you they've seen UFOs?
Oh, no, I haven't. No, that's my experience. Like I said, that was actually what I would consider my very first UFO experience. And I know in my heart that that's what that was. It was just, the light has not been there since. So you tell me what that light was. It wasn't a star. It was right above the top of the mountain. So it wasn't a star. So, what other explanation could it be? It had to be a UFO.
Yeah. And what do you think about the Patterson video? Do you think that that's real or fake?
I think it's authentic. You get conflicting people, different things. The way it turns, if you notice, the way it turns its whole body, and it's a female, And when it turns when it don't just turn its head like we can, it turns its body with it because it has basically no neck hardly. And if you watch the Paul Freeman footage, basically the same thing. It's actually more than one. It's an adult female, and then there's two younger. And he says that she reaches up down and scoops them up. Oh, it scared the living crap out of him because he'd been after wanting to try to get some footage for years and years and years. And then when it actually happened, it scared him to death. It terrified him.
Careful what you wish for.
Do you think this is the most interesting question about Bigfoot and UFOs that I also asked the Bigfoot researcher, Charlie Raymond. Do you think there's a connection between UFOs and Bigfoot?
Well, that's a possibility. I've seen clips, and I wish I need to write more stuff down because I'm just getting too old. I can't remember everything. I watched a clip one time. The guy was I think he was a minister, and he belonged to the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization.
Well, that's Neil, ain't it? Tracy?
Don Neal?
Yeah. That's definitely Don Neal.
Well, the clip that I was watching, he basically said that, and I don't really understand this, but they broke down the Bible and done it like taking paragraphs at a time and ever so many letters. He was basically saying it was like hidden passages in that, because he said that Sasquatch was mentioned several times in the Bible, but it was like they done it like that. I don't know if that's possible. I mean, and what kind of belief you would have in that. But he said that the Bible calls Sasquatch an unclean beast.
That's not Don. I don't think Don correlates that, so it may not be Don. The way I look at it, if that's the word of God, he's not going to try to fool you into.
I don't think so neither. That's my opinion on that.
That's supposed to be your roadmap to life. So
right.
He's not going to put in hidden roads for you to take. That's just the way I look at it.
But as far as the connection between UFOs and the Sasquatch, I do believe that there's portals. The Indians actually believe that Sasquatch is a spirit. And that would be some, if you look at it like that, then that would explain maybe why you cannot get a good sighting and things like that. It just suddenly disappears. But they believe that Sasquatch is actually a spirit. And then you can do the research. They talk about portals connections with the UFOs and Sasquatch. So, who knows?
I heard a story on another show. A guy had seen a Sasquatch. He was camping somewhere. I don't even remember where it was at, but he saw a Sasquatch walk into a tree and disappear.
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, the Indians believe that it's a spirit. So, that to me, if that's true, that would validate a lot of things about Sasquatch to me.
Yeah. To me, and I've said this before, that I've heard people make that correlation with UFOs and aliens. I've even heard them say that Bigfoot are demons and Nephilim and everything else. And I have nothing to back this claim up, what I'm about to say, but I just don't get that feel. I think when I really break it down, I think it may be just an undiscovered, maybe North American ape that has been here for thousands of years.
Yeah, well, then you've got the Yeti and different countries, like from Asia.
Well, and the reason why we're seeing more of them now, I mean, back, 100, 200 years ago, they may not have been, but just a handful of pockets of these things. But over the years, they're reproducing. I mean, how many sightings have you heard or somebody say we seen a small one that was 4 or 5 foot tall? And it's, more than likely that's a juvenile or a baby one. And now that just the population is starting to get to the point where people are seeing more and more of them. And on top of that, we've got social media. Everybody carries phones now. So it's just like anything else. The more technologically advanced we get, the more you get the advantage of filming stuff and taking pictures of stuff, because, just 25 years ago, nobody just carried a camera around with them, but now everybody has a camera. Everybody has a video, a way to video.
Yeah,
and,
at least on their phones.
Yeah, and we've got just about anything that we want to look up. We basically have a computer in our pocket, So things are happening so fast with the technology, and I think that now that we're getting so many reports of not just Bigfoot, I mean UFOs and everything else, and the more people that see these things and are reporting them, the less the stereotypical trailer park, hey, guess what I saw? That's going away. It's people are taking this serious now.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Nephilim. Have you seen some of the clips, like the encounters over in the Middle East and stuff with the soldiers?
I did see something about that briefly, but I didn't really look at it real hard. I was just kind of flipping through some news stories, and I just kind of seen it real quick.
They actually had an encounter with one, and the picture it showed like it had speared a soldier, and then they killed it. And a lot of the soldiers they attested it was true. They went into it was in a cave, and it was just full of skeletons, bodies, weapons where it had got other soldiers evidently, and different things. But you don't ever hear stuff like it. It's kept hush hush.
Right.
And I just truly believe that these governments is aware of things like this, that all this stuff, and they know of it.
Well, Junebug and I were talking one night, and I told him that I thought that if our government says, okay, yes, we have proof that Bigfoot exists, now they have to go on the endangered species list, and now we have to designate lands for them to live because they're an endangered species. Well, most of the sightings are up in the Pacific Northwest.
Correct.
Oregon, Northern California, Washington, Idaho, places like that. Well, what is their main export? Is lumber. So if they have to set aside a lot of land for these endangered Bigfoot, what's going to happen to the logging industry?
Yeah.
So, and that's just a theory of mine. I got nothing to back that up. That's just me thinking out loud.
Okay.
Do you think
the Nephilim possibly could still exist? Because was they not supposed to have been destroyed in the Great Flood? That was been one of the things that would it be a possibility that they could have went under into the earth and then escaped that flood? Would God have allowed that to happen?
Without pulling it up and reading my Bible to find out, I couldn't really answer that honestly right now, but my personal opinion would be no. I think what they have done when the Nephilim, the unclean spirits mated with the women on the earth, I think that continued that bloodline though.
Yeah. You see stories, different things, conspiracy stuff, basically that kind of stuff. And that's one of the things that these governments know about, that they have Nephilim and they're under the earth. So I've seen that somewhere.
Right.
Are you familiar with L.A. Marzulli? He's done some really cool documentaries on the Nephilim, and he discussed that story at length about the soldiers having the one corner there in the cave, and he speared some of the soldiers and all that stuff. He had a great documentary on that.
What's his name?
L.A. Marzulli.
I want to write that down because I'll watch it.
Yeah, it's a really cool story. He did a series of DVDs called The Watchers, and I can't remember. He did 10 volumes of it, and I can't remember for sure which volume it was on. I want to say like 8 or 9. It was later on up in there. He's out in Nevada, I believe it is, and he's got some amazing documentaries on that stuff.
I'll have to check him out.
Do you think for science to actually come out and say, hey, there's Bigfoot, are we going to have to kill one?
Well, that to me, Okay, like you see, there's different organizations that's wanting to hunt them, putting a bounty on them, basically. The way I look at that myself, my own personally, what if you do something like that and you kill it and it's actually more human than you would have imagined? It was human. And to me, that would just be this like if you just, I'd be basically committing murder. So, and if you do like the stories, and if you read like so many stories like I have, there's been families that's had contact with them. They would, I know I read this one story. This lady, she said that when she was growing up, she would leave apples on there was like a stump, and she would go back, and they would be arrowheads or something. It was like they was exchanging. I just think it's so fascinating myself.
Yeah, I actually heard of a lady one time. She would leave pancakes out, and when the next day or a couple days later, she would go back out, and there would be like a marble, laying where the pancakes were, or there would be a woven. They would take vines and weave them together in little strips and leave them where the pancakes were.
Right. Yeah, that was like they was exchanging gifts. They was thanking them, for their kindness or whatever.
Right. And then you have, the stories where, they're throwing rocks, they're beating on side of houses, and to me that's an aggression.
Well, see, I'd seen something. Actually, this guy, he believed that there was, just like humans, you had 3 different types of Sasquatch. You had one that was God-fearing, one that was demonic, and one that was like a layman in the middle that was neither way. They was more like a worker. And he said that there was 3 classifications, just like in humans. And he told different stories to back up each claim of why each one, was either God-fearing and demonic and that kind of thing, which all that kind of stuff, it just blows your mind when you actually start researching and getting into this stuff.
Yeah, they seem to have different tribes too, to go along with that. Like in the South, you'll see a lot of really aggressive reports from Bigfoot. In our area, they're more peaceful. They're kind of shy. They run away.
Right. And that's what that guy was saying. You had different types. You had your God-fearing, you had your demonic, and you had your basically the worker, the layman in between that, just like it is in the human race. So I just, that's why I kind of lean to the fact that I think that like they possibly could be a lost, well, not necessarily lost, but
undiscovered.
A group that was just decided they weren't going to follow society, and then they disappeared, and they've still not, they just disappeared basically, and now their people's getting closer and closer to making a discovery on stuff. And but now I truly believe that the government knows that they exist.
Absolutely.
And that they just think they don't tell stuff. I watched a clip in which I found very interesting. This guy, he was military. I want to think it was Marines. They was out on maneuvers, and while they was out, one of their vehicles, the Jeep or whatever, broke down. So normally he said that they would leave 2 people back with something like that. They wouldn't leave one by itself. He was the 3rd. He said he was the 3rd ranked sharpshooter, whatever, in the whole outfit, Marines, whatever it was. Okay. And they left him there by himself. Well, he said getting closer to dark, he could hear something, possibly a little over 100 yards from him. It was in the woods, and it was making its way like it was coming towards him. And he said he kept watching. And finally, he seen the creature, and he said it had glowing red eyes. And it started out like it was coming towards him, and he shot it and killed it. Okay. he said when he went to it to check, I mean, and he shot, like I said, he was a sharpshooter. He killed it. He said its blood was not red like you would normally see. He said it was almost like an oily type substance. And the next day when they come back to get him in the vehicle, the people come and got that creature, and they was in hazmat suits and stuff, and they picked that creature up and took it away. And when he got back to the base the next day after that, he said he was a general or whatever in the Air Force, and would have been considered like the Men in Black, that kind of thing. It came and spoke to him and said he better not ever tell what happened. Of course he did, but so that just tells me that the government, they know all this stuff, and they like everything else. It's like it's separate from all us common people. What they know everything, lots of stuff that we have no knowledge.
Yeah, I know. Do all three of you guys believe in mermaids, or?
Yep, that's like I mentioned a while ago. That clip that they showed it was on Discovery or one of them, and they had an old guy that was way up, commander in the Navy, and of course they blacked him out where you couldn't see who he was, and they done his voice, where it was real deep, and he told the tale about the mermaids. They was testing. The tale he told was that they was doing testing sonar weaponry. And it was causing the whales, dolphins, all this sea life to wash up. It was killing them. The sonar was. And these two young boys happened upon this carnage, so to speak, and they recorded it on their cell phone. Something, and you could see it distinctly. It raised up, looked at them, and then just fell right back down. It had human features, and then it had the fish. And the tale about the mermaids is that they just didn't want to follow society, and basically they adapted to the sea. They evolved, in other words, and adapted to the sea. So, and all this time, they've said that was a myth with these sailors and different things, seeing these mermaids, and it's not a myth. They exist.
There's been so many reports dating back 1600s or earlier, sailors and fishermen and stuff reporting these things that I think there's some truth to it.
Oh yeah, well they exist. And ain't no doubt about it. And just like Sasquatch and UFOs and these people that's high up in these governments and these very wealthy elite people, they have knowledge of all this stuff. They know it. They know it exists. I truly believe that.
What's your thoughts on it, Tracy?
I had never really thought much about mermaids as far as doing any kind of research on them or anything like that. I mean, but like Junebug said, there's been reports of these things from sailors for, since probably the 1400s, even maybe before then. Now, if they're saying mermaids, could that have been some kind of sea creature or something like that? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they mean a specific half woman, half fish, type creature. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really done much thoughts about mermaids, to be honest with you. So I don't really know.
Yeah, well, I can't remember how long ago that clip. You probably could research it and find it. But it was on the Discovery Channel or one of them, and I sat and watched that. And basically, it was half human, half fish, or whatever. And they think that it evolved. It was a group of people did not want to follow society, and it eventually adapted to the sea. It evolved, just like everything else. If you put something in a strange area over years, it's going to adapt to that, and it's going to evolve. It's going to have changes in its makeup and all that kind of stuff. It's just the way it is. So I can get wound out on this stuff. I can go forever and ever and ever and ever. That's fact.
Oh man, it makes for a good podcast, and definitely I'm going to try to get a mermaid researcher on. That's definitely would be an interesting podcast for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to see that myself. I'd just like to see what they think about that. Just the only thing I'd ever seen was that one show that one time, and that guy that was telling it. I mean, he was military. I mean, he was from the Navy and he was retired, and he was, they didn't want to identify him or nothing like that. And when them boys had that on they recorded that on their cell phones. The men in black, so to speak, came to their home, told them they had better never tell anyone of what they saw, what they seen. They checked that home over took their cameras, different things, and checked everything for if they had any pictures or anything like that. For whatever the reasons, they didn't think about the cell phone. That's what it comes. I mean, that's what the clip, when they showed that, they recorded it on their cell phone. And so that couldn't have been too much, too many years ago.
That documentary, I looked it up. It's Mermaids, The Body Found. It premiered on Animal Planet May 27th, 2012. So
right.
Is it on Discovery Plus?
I believe so. I saw a link about that on there as well.
Yeah, I got to watch that, man. That sounds so interesting.
And if not, it's old enough now. There's probably plenty of bootleg copies of it on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm not gonna watch, by the way. So don't copy strike me, But yeah, have any of you guys? Well, I already asked you guys this question. Earl, have you had any experiences seeing the man in black?
No, not had that experience.
I don't think I want to have that experience.
I don't think I would want to.
Well, if you believe the movie, we wouldn't remember it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I just I don't think I would want to have a conversation with them people at all. Because they would try to hide me away somewhere to try to keep me quiet, basically.
I guess the biggest thing about Men in Black that always comes to my mind is the Mothman and how they visited the people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia after the Mothman sighting. It's
have you ever seen them old pictures of that thing? It's sitting on top of the bridge.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
When I was, like I said, when I was doing route work, I would go before I took an area. I ended up taking 6 counties in central Kentucky, added to this. I had 13 counties up here. And I would go down on Mondays to London, and they would load my truck. I would ride with one of the other drivers. So I got to go to all these other areas. We went to this one area once, and I don't know how it got started. There was they had a customer come in there, and he was like, they didn't really believe him because he was like, maybe like something like the town drunk kind of thing. But he kept saying that he was seeing some kind of creature, and it was like maybe just like 4 foot tall. And they all laughed and made fun of him until one of the girls that worked there actually seen it. She was coming to work and she seen it. Well, when I was in contact with that lady from it, and she worked for the University of Kentucky, by the way. And when I mentioned it to her, she called it Moonwalker. She said that it was like 4 foot tall. And when you had one in your area where you was at, you would find all kinds of just dead rabbits. And I took it like it was something similar to like maybe the chupacabra or something, but it was like 4 foot tall, she said. And she said they actually had an encounter and they had it recorded. They recorded it. They didn't get to see it, but they could hear it. And it was the noises and all that kind of stuff. And but they called it Moonwalker, named it Moonwalker because it came out at night. And, so, but I got off my track. That same play in that same area, I was in another store, and they was talking about this elderly lady and her granddaughter. They went to a cemetery to decorate where her husband had passed away, and they went to decorate. They had an encounter with a winged creature and glowing red eyes. It was sitting up in a tree and was sitting right at them, just looking right at them. And they was just too terrified to do anything. So the way I look at that is, you get a tale like that from somebody that's an elderly person and a young child, they have no reason to make something up like that.
Right.
So this was in north central Kentucky, which would not be, probably not far from the actual Mothman area. So like I said, when I was doing that route work, I had so many people would come to you with me with tales when they found out that I was into all this stuff, and they would share their experiences with me. And I'm just like basically a walking encyclopedia with all this stuff that they've told me.
Speaking of Mothman, I interviewed one of the costume makers for the Mothman Museum. He made one of their costumes, man, and he had a lot of information about Mothman and stuff.
Oh yeah, and don't forget
That's
the
cool.
festival. The festival's coming up September 18th and 19th.
You guys going?
As of right now, yes, I'll be there.
You going, Junebug?
Yeah, as long as the government don't shut it down before time.
Yeah.
COVID.
See, that was supposed to be in. It was going to be at a different location. It was a coffee house over in Harlan. The one guy that I met over there a couple of years ago, he was coming to speak because I messaged him about it, and he said, "Yeah, I'm going to speak." He said, "Are you coming?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Well, they'll probably ask you to speak." They tried to get me to speak down there at that last one, and like I said, I'm a novice, and I was just too backward to get up there and just tell all this stuff. But now I'm not. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to do it, but they canceled it, and they're going to reschedule it. It was supposed to be like 2 weeks ago, and that would be because it's not only Sasquatch, it's UFOs, all the paranormal, all the stuff, spirits, you name it. Different people come. They come from all over the country and they speak.
I'm kind of like you with all the locals coming in to tell their stories. I work at a grocery store here in Williamson, and I bet at least once a week people come in and they'll tell me stuff they saw. I saw a UFO last night. I heard a Bigfoot, just like that. And I've got a buddy of mine that I work with. He's always hearing weird things over in the holler across from him. He'll hear screams and monkey sounds and stuff, he says. And this past Sunday, he said he was out there in his yard and he saw what he thought was a balloon just lift up off the creek and go shoot straight up in the sky. It was silver. And he said, looked just like a helium balloon, small thing. But the only problem with that is there's no houses down in there and nobody ever goes down there. There's not going to be any kid just down there. Oh, let's set up a balloon right here. That's not going to happen.
Right. That's interesting.
And are you guys just going straight to the Mothman Festival from your house, or you guys staying in a hotel?
Yeah, I usually drive it every year. It's a couple hours away from me. I drive there on the Saturday. I never went to the Sunday festivities. Sunday seems to be kind of slow for them. There's not many speakers or anything. I always go on Saturday.
I too will go on Saturday. No, I can be there in about 35, 45 minutes. It's not very far from me. Y'all come on up and stay with me and we'll all go.
Unfortunately, I don't have the privilege in coming back home because it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours for me.
Well, my problem's work. I work so much that.
What's your take on those red eyes? Do you like the Mothman, the red eyes? Bigfoot has red eyes. Any kind of
well, evil? But now if people a lot of times that's red eye stuff, it's like, that's not with every sighting. So, that kind of would, my thoughts on that would be, possibly with the red eyes, it might be demonic. That's my opinion. Then you've got the other ones that don't have that red eye stuff. But the ones that are red eyed, and especially like that guy was saying that on the Sasquatch, that it was violent. That would scream to me like, that's demonic.
I talked to a Sasquatch researcher out in Virginia in Whitfield a couple of years ago. 4 or 5 years ago now. But out in Whitfield, he said that he has saw several Bigfoot over the years, Sasquatch. And his deal was he was just sitting out in the hills waiting one night, just pretty much camping out without a tent, just sitting there. And he saw the red eyes coming at him from several yards away. said just glowing like hot embers. No kind of light reflection. He didn't have a flashlight. There was no moon that night. They were just independently glowing.
Right. Yeah, I've seen different people that speak like that. They've had that kind of encounter, and it's I don't know how I would react. I've had so many people ask me, what would you do if you actually come face to face? And I said, well, I would just hope that it wouldn't slam me against a tree, and that some way that I could just maybe try to communicate with it some way and just see for my own self that if it could communicate with you. Because I actually seen a story a while back that actually usually in each, they called it tribes, that there would be one in each tribe that could communicate with humans. They knowed the human language. So I found that very interesting too. Not all of them, but there would be at least one in each tribe that could do that.
I don't want to see one at all.
Well, it's an experience you'll never forget.
Like Tracy says, I don't want to see one. Don't want to be around one, right, Tracy?
No, that's because I hunt and I fish, and I spend a lot of time out in the woods by myself. And I think if I would run across something like that, it would ruin, my outdoors experience, probably to where I probably would never go back out.
Yeah. I just speaking of when we was young, growing up, we'd squirrel hunt. We'd usually leave like 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, go back, sit on top of the hill.
Yeah, before daylight.
Yeah, and shoot the bull until it got daylight. Then we'd go our separate ways.
Right.
Above here where I live, on top of the mountain, Big Branch Mountain, we went one morning, and we was all sitting, and where I was sitting at when I was waiting for it to get good in daylight, because the place I was going down into, they call it Dark Hollow. If you was not very careful, you would get turned around and you'd end up over in Lots Creek. You'd get totally lost. Well, I was sitting there. My buddy had went. It was 3 or 4 of us. We all went our separate ways. Like I said, I was waiting for it to get better daylight. My one buddy went behind me up the ridge, and he was gone possibly not 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And he comes turn off that ridge, gets into the pickup, just sits there staring forward. And I look around at him, and he's just sitting there, And I get up and I said, what are you doing off the ridge? And he just was sitting there almost like he was in shock. Because like I said, like that time, we was probably 16, 17 years old. Finally, he speaks and he says, there's something up there. And I'm like, okay, well, what's up there? I don't know. It's big. I said, what was it, a bear? No, it's not no bear. I said, well, what was it? I don't know. I said, well, we got guns. Let's go back up there. No, I ain't going. I'm not getting out of this truck. So me being the way I was, I just took off, go up the ridge. It was good in daylight. I followed the path. There was a path. There was an old barbed wire fence that run up through there. I followed all through there. At that time, see, I didn't know it was nothing like that. So I didn't know what I was looking for. I was just looking for something, to see something. I never did. I never seen a thing. So I come back up the hill, and I said, there's nothing up there. Well, I ain't going back. I'm not getting out of the truck. I said, well, you want to go down there? I'm not getting out of this truck, he said. So I went on back up that ridge, hunted, never killed nothing, never seen nothing. Came back off. We all met and came off, and nothing more was said about it. It's been a couple of years ago. He come into the store down there. He lives in Indiana now. And I mentioned it to him. I said, do you remember when this happened? And I was talking about the way it happened. He said, yeah. I said, so what exactly do you think that you saw that day? And he said, he wouldn't say nothing. And I said, was it a Sasquatch? And he shook his head, yeah. And I said, I knew it. That's what, because I've thought about that forever. And then he confirmed that's what it was. And just recently, it's been back when I went to like I was telling you about, I've possibly seen the orbs. I came and went up there where we used to go hunting, and it's changed a lot. I hadn't been through there in 30 years, and the road has changed. And there was a place back there. It was a slate dump. We called it Pineapple Stadium. We go back there and play softball and everything. It is scrolled up now, and you could barely see some of the slate. But I went to exact place where I sit when I used to go up there and we go squirrel hunting. That path is still up that ridge, and I looked that whole area over though. Not found one print, not no structures, nothing. I never found anything. But he had that experience that many years ago. So, and the people that lives on top of this mountain, I asked them, I said, have you ever heard or seen anything up here? Heard any screams, any knocks, anything? He said, no. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, Earl, we got somebody that actually was with you at that. He used to go hunting with you and everything. Harvey's on here on the phone.
Yep. It was him and several of my cousins, and the guy that actually had the encounter, his name was Dean, and but now he confirmed it. That's what it was to me. After we're all grown, like I said, when you're a teenager, you don't think. I didn't think of nothing like that back then, or anything like that even existing. But now all this stuff that happened back then when I squirrel hunted and things, it all makes sense now, but back then it didn't.
Hey, Earl, I know it's getting late and we got to kind of wind it down here and everything, but before we started recording, you were talking about a dog man story. Do you care to run through that?
Well, okay. Well, let's just say that the instance that happened in Knott County, I got on and the clip was on YouTube, but I on Facebook they have several of them groups, and the one I'm in is called Dog Man Believers. I'm positive that's what it's called. Anyways, some of the other members was, more the experts, so to speak, was talking about it. And this guy had put this clip out. It was on YouTube, and he was talking about that had happened over there. And his tale was that they actually was over there 3 nights. They encountered the creature, and he put 6 rounds in it. They come and picked it up, took the body away, and that was the end of it. Okay. Just so happened I know family members, and that was not what they told me whatsoever, what they felt would happen. The thing about it to me that I find very interesting is that story just disappeared. It fell off the map. There has been nothing said no more about it. Nothing. So my question is, why is not, something, they've said coyotes done it, drug him up the mountain. What I was told was totally different from that. And like he was talking about a while ago, I'm about afraid to say what the family member told me because if it's under investigation, but now it was totally, totally different from what I was told about it, what the family member told me. And they was very distraught about it. They was not happy, so to speak. So because they felt that child was not cared for properly, in other words, and when this stuff happened. But now that this guy, like I said, was putting out this tale about that he had put 6 rounds in this creature, and it was Dogman. That's what he said it was. And that's what killed the little boy. And I'm not saying that creature does not exist. I would be one first to say that I would never want to encounter it, because to me, it's evil. Nothing short of evil. It would be basically like a werewolf kind of creature, something like that has nothing but death in its mind. A hunter, that kind of thing. I wouldn't know. No way do I won't get involved in that, something crossing that creature.
I hear that a lot on every Dogman report. The witness will talk about that thing just being plain evil. And
right,
you don't get that a lot on Sasquatch.
No. It's a totally different thing. And that I find it interesting, but no, I don't want no part of that. I'm not going to be one that's going to be out hunting for one of them things. No, sir.
I don't think anybody with a brain wants to.
No, that's just one of them that you just encountered. I don't think you look for.
No, I ain't looking for Bigfoot either.
No, me neither.
I don't know if I want to see a mermaid either.
If it's not in the Ohio River, I'm probably not going to see it.
But I want to thank In Dark Places with doing the crossover podcast with me, and I want to thank Earl for doing the podcast with me, man. You had some heck of stories.
Oh yeah, thanks a lot, Earl. Those were
Yeah.
great. I wanted to add.
So
one more-
y'all's group is called is it In Dark Places? It's on Facebook.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's on Facebook, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube.
Okay. I'll hunt you then. Because
We got to stay in touch, man. You got some awesome stories. We really
oh yeah,
appreciate your time.
I've got a boatload. I can tell you. Like I said, I can sit and talk hours on end about tales that people have told me, and it's from all over this state for sure, Kentucky, and then plus where I've made contacts with these people like Matthew and Thomas and some of them, and I met a lot of people from all over the country, and I mean, when I went to that thing, I mean, I was just there, and then when I started talking to Thomas, he knowed me from his friends that he know from the Lee County. That's how they found out about me. That's how the show found out about me on that route. And he asked me, he said, did you used to drive a route truck? And I said, yes, I did. And he said, well, I know of you. I had this first time I've met you, but I've heard of you. Well, it just basically traveled through the whole place. And then I ended up talking to everyone. They come over and sit down and want to hear stuff. And it was really, really fascinating to me that. And plus with people that actually, what I consider would be, I'm a novice. They would be professionals and have equipment and different things like that.
Well, we will definitely keep in touch with you and have you on from time to time to tell some stories. But I want to say again that if you do have a story, let us know. If you want to keep your name out of it, that's fine. Got no problem with that whatsoever. Junebug, how they get a hold of us?
You can reach In Dark Places at indarkplacespod@hotmail.com.
Just shoot us a message. We'll get together. And like I said, if you want to keep your name quiet, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine as well. So, Seth, thanks again for letting us use this platform to get out our craziness.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys doing the podcast for sure, man. The crossover podcast, and Earl, I'll plan on having you back on soon if that's okay with you.
I'll be glad to participate.
And
I really enjoyed this. I'm glad to meet you guys.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
you too.
Man. It was great meeting you as well, and I definitely will tell the people at Here to Chew Bubblegum about you so they can have you on their radio show that's on WKCB and WXLR as well.
Okay, thank you. And like I said, if anybody has anything, they can get in contact with me or work or anything. And if they want to kind of talk to somebody that wants to listen to them and won't make fun of them, I'm that man. So,
yeah, if you want to tell me about your UFO stories or anything, message me at Seth's Daily Podcast on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. It is Seth's Daily Podcast on Facebook. If you want to tell me about it, and I'm not going to judge you because how can I judge you when I've seen one myself?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Here. Same here.
And I'm on live radio, telling a story about it. So trust me, I'm not going to judge you. And y'all have a good night, and God bless. And definitely subscribe to In Dark Places on YouTube. Follow them on Spotify and wherever you can find your podcast, wherever you can get podcasts that they're on, and definitely like their Facebook page as well, In Dark Places on Facebook.
And remember, no matter how hard you try, you can't outrun a monkey.
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank you guys for subscribing, man, for sure. And y'all have a good night, and God bless.
I'd like to thank Seth for letting us come on his show again. And a huge thank you to Earl Mullins for sharing these amazing stories with us. If you've had a cool sighting you'd like to tell us about and you'd like to be a guest on our show, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening, and God bless you.